Friends, an unusual event just happened on Tverskaya in Moscow. I'll show you. We just found out. Awful. The central Christmas tree fell. And I must say, when a central Christmas tree falls in the heart of Moscow, or really not just in Moscow, but anywhere when a central Christmas tree falls, it's a very ominous sign. This, my friends, is a clear harbinger of a black swan event that most certainly awaits Moscow, and especially the Kremlin. Why do I say that? Because today the clouds are gathering very seriously. Well, perhaps not directly over Putin himself, but it's certainly hovering over the general staff of the Russian Federation's army. The unfolding scandal surrounding Gerasimov's report concerning the purported capture of Ukrainian Kupiansk is now genuinely pushing past all limits. It poses a real threat, not merely to the leadership of the general staff and Gerasimov himself, but fundamentally to the entire set of approaches that Putin's inner circle persistently seeks to promote and implement. Regarding the rapid seizure, or more accurately, the proclaimed capture of Ukrainian territories, as became evident. It all started with Gerasimov's report last week, in which Gerasimov quickly rushed to declare to Putin, not about Kupiansk anymore, but rather about Siversk. However, it was articulated with the assertion that the Russian Federation already exercises control over 45% of the populated area. To which Z bloggers immediately responded to Gerasimov. Is that the same 45% as when you, dear sir, told us a month ago that Kupiansk was completely taken? And so the highly popular Z channel, Military Informant, writes this, simply confirming Gerasimov's entirely false reports. In the case of Kupiansk, reports about the liberation of half its territory and its encirclement were made more than a month prior to the actual capture of that half. And then it was even asserted that the city was fully under the control of the Russian armed forces, which in reality remains untrue to this day. No month passed. For Pokrovsk and Mirnohrad, reports of encirclement were made a month before their real encirclement in Mirnohrad. By then, the enemy had fully lost Pokrovsk. Though battles in Pokrovsk, as you know, that's ironic, is still going on. And here's another interesting post for you. Just a couple of thoughts on Kupiansk, shared by yet another Z channel on Telegram known as Kremlin Snuffbox. Look what they write here. The appearance of Volodymyr Zelensky on the outskirts of Kupiansk, supposedly liberated by Russian troops, was a rude awakening for many in Moscow. We won't dramatize, but we have repeatedly written that Valery Gerasimov is clearly rushing his reports about our army's successes on the front. This leads to unnecessary losses among Russian soldiers. This time, it also led to reputational losses. They first decided not to inform the president of the incident, then claimed the Zelensky video was fake, reports Kremlin Snuffbox. Imagine that. They're not just lying to Putin regarding the capture, but also about Zelensky having been at the Kupiansk stele. And it's a fake video, right? It's clear. No one in the Kremlin wants to take responsibility for what occurred. And why should they? Gerasimov, and listen to this, personally threw the president under the bus and has done so repeatedly. Got it? And now, regarding that specific part about it leading to unnecessary losses among Russian military personnel. In light of this situation, the ATESH movement, which is a Ukrainian partisan resistance group, published this rather interesting post earlier today. ATESH agents, specifically officers within the center group of forces, indicate that the general staff of the Russian armed forces is experiencing significant pressure from the highest levels of Russia's political leadership. The reason for this frenzy is Gerasimov's inability to ensure the fulfillment of key strategic objectives, the capture of Kupiansk and the Pokrovsk-Mirnohrad agglomeration within the previously set deadlines. Friends, there's also a big commotion happening in the Ministry of Defense. There's information that Belousov, their Minister of Defense, is now adjusting the deadlines for capturing the so-called DPR, right? It was previously announced for January 2027. So under this evident pressure, these timelines are now being adjusted to March of 2026. And this too represents a highly improbable and unrealistic situation. Thus, through ongoing negotiations, they are currently struggling to push their agenda for the withdrawal of armed forces from the uncaptured, unoccupied territories within the Donbas region. As you're aware, the two-day negotiation sessions in Berlin haven't yet resulted in such concessions from Ukraine. And all this deceit regarding the capture of the agglomeration. For example, you can observe the deep state map of Kupiansk, where I might add a successful operation to neutralize Russian military forces was indeed executed. Therefore, according to the official report from the Kartia Corps, yes, this is the second corps of the National Guard named Kartia, which actively participated in this very operation and is currently blocked. In fact, at least 200 servicemen from the Russian Federation are effectively encircled. This is a total and utter failure, especially after that video clip from just a month ago. So how about we just go ahead and watch it one more time, okay?
The Zapad groups have liberated the city of Kupiansk and are continuing to destroy formations of the armed forces of Ukraine, which are currently encircled on the left bank of the Oskil River. The offensive is successfully progressing towards Rubs.
Well, that was exactly a month ago, and now we find ourselves confronted with this new development regarding an absolutely successful operation, wouldn't you say? From a political perspective, this is without a doubt a tremendous setback, a truly colossal blow that could indeed bring about very substantial personnel and strategic shifts within the Russian Federation's general staff. And the final outcome, you see, of this entire developing situation has the potential to be quite surprising, and as I mentioned earlier, could very well serve as a harbinger of a black swan event. The thing is, the strategy currently chosen by the general staff could fall apart at a supremely inconvenient moment for Putin. Currently, the finalization and alignment of Trump's peace plan, or more accurately, the Vitkov-Dmitriev plan, as we ought to read it, is in progress. This particular plan, having been meticulously crafted over several months, is extraordinarily beneficial for the Russian Federation at this moment, and is supposedly, in quotes, backed by the Russian Federation's triumphs on the battlefield. I'll remind you of Putin's recent declaration, stating that we shall secure Donbas either through diplomatic channels, should the armed forces of Ukraine withdraw, or via military means, given our evident and sustained advances. Now, that whole foundation, it's absolutely not functioning at all, and in fact, it's completely crumbling. The final stage, negotiations are finalized. I repeat, this signifies a full-scale collapse and a fundamental conceptual alteration for the Russian Federation at this very moment. Evidently, their ability to resist is quite limited now. And there's only one scenario that could shield the Russian Federation, frankly, from yielding and crossing this vital red line concerning the territorial issue crucial for both Kyiv and Russia. This single issue depends entirely on whether Ukraine and the European Union fail to agree on the reparation credit. The 18th, I'll remind you, is the summit where the decision should be announced. Ukraine has promising prospects. If this financial decision, odd as it may seem, which is directly tied to the battlefield situation, comes to fruition. If this resolution successfully moves forward, then the Russian Federation will be compelled to agree to an immediate halt of hostilities along the front line. So this is precisely what is currently happening, and that's precisely why this is a sign that I think is worth believing in today.